to marry me. She was willing to risk the punishment of her family, even if it meant having her legs broken. She chose to abandon the marriage proposal with someone of equal social standing and sever ties with her family completely. 3 years after the marriage, I worked day and night at multiple part-time jobs to earn money for Liu Ryan's treatment and recovery. One day, I was standing outside a high-end custom suit store, playing the role of an inflatable mannequin. Suddenly, I saw Liu Ryan dressed luxuriously, still surrounded by a crowd of people. But this time, her legs were moving freely as she stepped into the store and bought all the high-end custom suits priced over 300,000 yuan. Through the thick fabric of my mannequin costume, I could hear Liu Ryan chatting with her sisters. "You're getting married to Shinon next month, right? What do you plan to do about Zhou Rui?" Liu Ryan smiled and replied, "Of course, I'll keep him around. It's not every day you meet a fool willing to support me. Don't worry. Zhou Rui is really easy to deceive." When Shinon wanted to go abroad to study, I was so bored. I casually found an ordinary man to play along. Who would have thought that a marriage certificate bought online for 9.9 yuan would fool him for 3 whole years? However, none of you are allowed to speak recklessly in front of Zhou Rui. Otherwise, you'll lose the chance to be sisters. Liu Ryan didn't recognize me. And as she left, she casually slipped a 1,000 yuan tip into my hand. The middleman, Wu Zhe, who was in charge of arranging part-time jobs, immediately came over, extending his hand towards me. "Zhou Rui, according to company policy, this extra income has to be split 50-50 with the company." I removed the mannequin mask from my face and shoved the entire 1,000 yuan into his hand. "Wu Zhe, could you do me a favor? Could you ask about that part-time drug testing job you mentioned before? If it's still available, sign me up." Wu Zhe paused for a moment, his hand, which had been counting the money, hesitating slightly. "Didn't I tell you before? This drug is still in clinical trials. The known side effects are very clear. That is, you'll lose your memory. And the more intense the memory, the more completely it's erased. Aren't you worried you might forget your wife this time? Not afraid that you won't be able to grow old with her?" Wu Ji's tone carried a hint of mockery, which caused a sharp pain to pull at my nerves, still raw from the shock. This pain wasn't heart-wrenching, but it was real, lingering, and impossible to ignore. Everyone who knew me was fully aware of how sincere my love for Liu Ryan was. Sincere enough that Liu Ryan was so confident that as long as she kept her secrets well, she could deceive me for a lifetime. Thinking about it now, it's almost laughable. I clenched my lips tightly and forced myself to calm the turbulent thoughts swirling in my mind. I forced a bright smile and said to Wu Zhe, "When the drug trial is over, wasn't there a reward of 10 million? The money's already in hand, so the memory loss doesn't matter, right?" The drug testing process was quick. That afternoon, after taking the medication, a device the size of a watch was strapped to my wrist to transmit my bodily data back to the laboratory in real time. By evening, I returned home as usual. When Liu Ryan saw me, she hurriedly wheeled over and took my bag from my hands. "Darling, you're finally back. If you didn't come soon, the food would be cold. Hurry, come and try this. I made all of it myself." I followed the direction of Liu Ryan's finger and saw a table of dishes that were almost unbearable to look at, each one either undercooked or burnt. None of them even remotely edible. In the past, I always felt sorry for Liu Ryan for all she had given up for me. So no matter how the food turned out, I would devour it eagerly, finishing every last bite. But now, I simply washed my hands calmly and grabbed a jar of spicy sauce from the fridge to mix with my rice. Liu Ryan didn't seem to notice my coldness and cheerfully picked up a piece of half-raw fish and placed it in my bowl. "Zhou Rui, I have good news to tell you. I found a job. After all these years, you've had to work and take care of me. It must have been so hard. Now that I have a job, then I can help you support this family too. I nodded absently and continued to shovel rice into my mouth. But there's one downside to this job. It requires me to be stationed in another city for long periods. Each month, I might have 1 or 2 days off, or maybe no days off at all. So, I won't be able to be home with you every day like I am now. I lifted my head from my bowl and glanced at the woman across from me, her eyes feigning deep affection. Her eyes were so full of artifice. Truth or lie, she was clearly using work as an excuse to openly play both sides. I should have slapped her right there and then, and exposed her clumsy acting. But after a moment's thought, I decided against it. The experimenter had told me that this drug would take effect quickly. It wouldn't be long before. I forgot who this woman sitting in front of me even was. Liu Ryan finally noticed the change in my expression, but she misinterpreted it, thinking I couldn't bear to let her leave me. That night, as we went to bed, she wrapped her arms around me and held me tightly from behind. Her voice, like an incantation, whispered in my ear, "Baby, don't be afraid. Separation is only temporary. No matter where I go, my heart will always be with you." Liu Ryan's poor attempt at sweet talk made me think back to when we first met. Liu Ryan had practically poured everything she had into chasing after me. She said she didn't like the marriage match her family had arranged for her. She told me that she had fallen in love with me at first sight. She said to marry me. She didn't hesitate to send her well-matched fiancé abroad, and even broke ties with her family in front of my eyes. She had her legs broken by a stick as thick as a bull. That day, it was pouring rain. I carried her, running from one hospital to the next, not knowing how many times I fell. It wasn't until today that I realized her well-matched fiancé was already going abroad. The drama of her breaking ties with her family was just a performance with hired extras. Even our marriage certificate had been bought online by her. And she lied to me, saying she had special channels at the Civil Affairs Bureau to handle it. Thinking about this, I suddenly felt disgusted to the core. I forcefully broke free from Liu Ryan's embrace and bent over the toilet, throwing up until I felt the world spinning. I don't even know how long I threw up for. Liu Ryan handed me a cup of hot water. The water was bitter and astringent, yet she coldly tried to comfort me. "Good boy, drink some hot water and your stomach will feel better. If you drink it all, you'll feel fine." I grudgingly drank it all down. In the early hours, I suddenly felt the room spinning. My head was pounding. I felt nauseous. My lower body was swollen like a rock, and my legs were gradually losing sensation. My first thought was, I had just taken the experimental drug, and this must be a side effect. I was about to call the experimenter to report my adverse reaction, but the sharp pain in my abdomen made me lose consciousness completely. When I woke up again, I was lying on a hospital bed. The doctor was scolding Liu Ryan, who was standing by my side. "This chemical drug hasn't even been released in the country yet. How could you use such a large dose so carelessly?" I felt like my heavy head had been struck by lightning. It turned out that night, Liu Ryan had tried to make me infertile for life. It turned out that night, the bitter water she gave me contained a contraceptive drug meant for men. It turned out she never once considered a future with me. Liu Ryan noticed my eyelids twitching and hurriedly sent the doctor away. She leaned over my bed and whispered my name. "Joe Rui! Are you awake? Joe Rui! Wake up! Joe Rui!" The incessant noise made it impossible for me to fall back asleep, so I could only open my eyes. What I saw was Liu Ryan's eyes, red and filled with guilt. "Joe Rui! I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I didn't take care of you properly. You can hit me. You can scold me. I wish I could stab myself a few times. How could I? While Liu Ryan was incoherently apologizing, her phone suddenly rang. The name displayed was Shinon, husband. The four words were especially noticeable. She quickly turned away, swiping to answer the call. Him. Okay, I understand. It's fine here. I can come over now. After hanging up the phone, Liu Ryan wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Joe Rui, I'm really sorry. My new job is asking me to come over right now. You're fine here, right? Liu Ryan's phone reception wasn't very good. I could barely hear her side of the conversation, with bits and pieces like miss you, baby, and family dinner reaching my ears. It's okay, I'm fine on my own. The words came out confidently, and for some reason, my heart didn't ache as much anymore. The woman in front of me was beginning to feel more and more unfamiliar. After Liu Ryan left, I spent 3 days alone in the hospital, resting. Every day, without fail, Liu Ryan would call me several times via video, sending numerous texts full of concern and warm greetings. But my replies became fewer and fewer. Liu Ryan asked me, "Why don't you like replying?" I simply answered, "I forgot." 3 days later, I left the hospital on my own, returned home, tittied up the room, and made myself a bowl of hot noodles. Just as I took the first bite, I heard the urgent sound of someone unlocking the door. Liu Ryan rushed in, her wheelchair and crutches forgotten in the hallway. When she saw me sitting at the table, calmly eating my noodles, her face grew even darker. Joe Rui, how did you come back on your own? Didn't I tell you I was coming to pick you up from the hospital today? I blinked, confused, and bit off the piece of noodle I had just put in my mouth. Really? I didn't know. It seemed like I had caught Liu Ryan off guard. She could only take out her phone. She pointed to the message she had sent me last night and said, "Look, you promised me so clearly yesterday." Really? I glanced at it and continued eating my noodles without lifting my head. Sorry, I forgot. Liu Ryan sighed heavily. How could you forget so easily lately? How can you forget everything? Is it because I didn't go to the hospital to accompany you these past few days that you're upset with me? Joe Rui, you misunderstood me. I was just doing it for. I know. You were doing it for work. I interrupted her directly. Sorry. Could you get me a glass of water? Liu Ryan stood up to grab a glass. Suddenly realizing that she had rushed over without using her crutches, she slowly sat back down, hesitating, trying to find the right words. Well, Joe Rui, actually. What? Actually, my legs are almost fully healed. I didn't want to tell you. I was afraid you might get too excited. In a panic, Liu Ryan quickly thought of a flimsy excuse. Oh, I see. That's great then. My reaction was strangely calm, because in these mere 3 days, I had already forgotten that Liu Ryan had once broken my legs for me. The questioning I had imagined never came. Instead, Liu Ryan seemed even more lost. She walked over to me and suddenly pulled me into her embrace. Joe Rui, are you really okay? If we don't go back to the hospital for another checkup. Joe Rui, did you hear something at the hospital? Or has someone found you in the past few days and said something to you? Liu Ryan grabbed my arm, shaking me vigorously. Joe Rui, you have to believe me. I love you. I've never lied to you. Really? I gave up my fiancé for you. I gave up my family for you. I have nothing left except for you. You can't leave me. You can't leave me. Liu Ryan's voice was so humble, like a puppy afraid of being abandoned. But the memories left in my mind told me Liu Ryan had deceived me. She had tricked me with a clumsy lie for 3 whole years. She was the powerful young lady of the Beijing circle, and I was just a spice in her boring life. But that's fine, because I was about to forget it all. Soon I'd forget completely. I calmly slipped out of Liu Ryan's grip I lowered my gaze and smiled at her. Don't worry too much. I'm just tired after leaving the hospital. I'll rest for a while, and then I'll be fine. Liu Ryan didn't believe my dismissive words. She spent the entire night tightly holding onto me. The next day, she followed me everywhere, as if the moment she couldn't see me, I might disappear from this world forever. But unfortunately, as Liu Ryan's wedding day drew near, she had to loosen her grip on me. In the days that followed, she rarely returned to the apartment we had shared. Her daily greetings became fewer and fewer. To this, I hardly felt any discomfort. Wu Jie, the middleman, was right. The side effects of this drug were significant. The more deeply ingrained the memory, the more thoroughly it would be erased. Every day, I would forget a little more about Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan's kindness, Liu Ryan's deep affection. It felt as if there were a giant eraser in my brain, wiping everything about Liu Ryan clean. Meanwhile, Liu Ryan was busy preparing for her wedding, and I was busy tidying up the rental house. On her side, Liu Ryan was arranging the wedding room. On mine, I was searching for my ideal home across the country. Once the trial period was over, and the bonus was in hand, I planned to fly to the city I'd always wanted to live in, and live the life I truly desired. There were 3 days left until the trial period ended, and then Wu Jie sent me another message. Little bro, I know you're about to become rich, but here, I'm really short on staff. Can you come work as a waiter for a day tomorrow? There's a big wedding for a wealthy man, and there should be plenty of red envelopes to grab, and the leftover dishes and snacks in the kitchen can be packed up. What do you think? I cleared my throat and replied to Wu Jie. Don't say that. I'm not rich yet. I'm still relying on your daily wages to get by. If there's such a good opportunity, how could I not participate? Perfect. Wu Jie laughed, slapping his thigh. I'll send the location to your phone right now. The call ended, and an electronic invitation quickly appeared in my inbox. The cover featured a large photo of the groom and bride in their wedding suits, with their names and the venue below. Groom, Liu Ryan. Bride, Zhuang Shinan. Address, Crown Rose Hotel. Liu Ryan. I silently read the name in my mind. It sounded familiar, like I had heard it somewhere before. But I couldn't remember where exactly. I didn't think too much about it. The next morning, I changed into the uniform of a server, and under the event coordinator's instructions, I worked diligently, greeting guests and serving drinks. As I was distributing champagne to the guests, the groom suddenly rushed toward me from the stage. He grabbed my hand and pulled me into a relatively quiet corner. Joe Rui, what do you think you're doing? Who sent you here? I knew it. You must have heard something these past few days, and that's why you've been pretending to be indifferent to me. You've been holding back, just waiting to ruin my wedding today, haven't you? Joe Rui, I never thought you could be such a malicious person. Yes, I lied to you, but I plan to deceive you for a lifetime. Even if I get married, I've never thought of giving up on you. Why did you come here? Why are you ruining my wedding? Liu Ryan's madness seemed to hit a soft, fluffy cotton ball. I looked into her eyes, frowning in confusion. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Who are you? Who am I? Liu Ryan's expression seemed like she had just heard the greatest joke in the world. Joe Rui, long time no see. Have you learned how to pretend to be lost? Pretend to be pitiful? Let me tell you, I, Ryan, have seen so many men in my life. I've seen countless methods of men fighting for favor, but yours is the lowest, the most unrefined. I, completely puzzled, was successfully angered by the mocking tone of the woman in front of me. Miss, I'm just here today as a temporary service staff to help at the wedding. I've never seen you before. Since the wedding started, I've been following the unified arrangements from the event coordinators. I'm not aware of where I went wrong. To make you misunderstand that I'm trying to ruin your wedding. If you're truly dissatisfied with my work today, then I can leave the scene right now. In the future, I also promise I won't appear in front of you again. After saying that, I took off the ID tag around my neck and turned to leave, but was stopped by Liu Ryan, who was relentless. You're not allowed to leave. I only know that once you leave, will you go out and cause trouble again? Her grip on my wrist caused a sharp pain. The anger made me struggle violently. Help! Someone please! Help! Quick, someone help! The guests, who had been exchanging confused glances, looked toward me when they heard my voice. The groom on stage also lifted his skirt and began walking toward me. Liu Ryan didn't give me a chance to explain to the guests, because the security she called for had already grabbed my hands and feet and blocked my mouth, while she seemed completely unfazed, as if nothing had happened, and calmly walked back to her wedding. Sorry, everyone. That man just now was a crazy admirer of mine. He's been harassing me for a long time. I didn't expect him to show up at the wedding today. Thankfully, I noticed him in time, or else he would have ruined my wedding with Shinen. After saying that, she took the groom's hand and kissed his thin lips gently. With a deep, affectionate kiss, the applause from the crowd drowned out my struggles and pleas. I only felt flashes of black and white before my eyes, and soon lost consciousness. When I woke up again, I found myself in a huge, luxuriously decorated bedroom. I scrambled to my feet and rushed to the door, pushing it a few times, but I found that the door had already been locked from the outside. I tried to find my phone to call the police, but everything on me, including my phone and clothes, had been taken away. An overwhelming sense of unfamiliarity washed over me. I really don't know where I offended that bride from that day, and I truly regret it. I was so close to receiving my payment for the successful drug trial. The new house I had chosen was still waiting for me to complete the transfer process. Why did I take that last part-time job at this time? In a state of extreme panic, I rushed to the door once again, pounding on the thick wooden door with all my might. But no matter how much I shouted, whether I screamed or cried, or even cursed, there was no response from outside the door. After struggling for what felt like ages, the sharp pain hit me once more. A wave of blackness rushed over my vision, then a flash of white. Just the thought of the groom from that day on stage made my mind swirl in chaos. The memories in my mind felt like a large shattered puzzle. I had no idea how many pieces were missing, or how much sand had slipped through. In the end, I couldn't remember anything. I don't know how long it had been, but the bedroom door finally opened. A group of women dressed as maids entered, carrying food. I knelt on the ground, begging each of them for help, but the maids only held the trays. The lead maid said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Joe, but Miss Liu said you're a habitual liar. So you must stay here and reflect on your actions. When you're ready to tell the truth, and stop pretending not to know her, she will naturally let you go." After that, they placed the food on the table, set the dishes down, and turned to leave, exiting together. I was furious, and I smashed the food they brought, scattering it all over the floor. Still, no one responded from outside the door. Then several hours passed, and the maids came back with fresh food. Without a word, they cleaned up the mess on the floor. Every day was the same after that. The maids came regularly to bring meals, clean the room, and replace my daily necessities. But no one spoke to me. In this suffocating and unfamiliar environment, each day, my head ached terribly. The pieces of the puzzle in my mind showed no sign of coming together. I still didn't know who Liu Ryan was, or what had happened between her and me. And so, I stumbled through for days and nights and days. On the fifth morning, I finally heard a noise outside the bedroom suite door, a sound I had never heard before. Ms. Liu had ordered that no one was allowed to enter and speak to me. This shouldn't include me, right? Even if it doesn't matter. I, Zhuang Shinin, whether by marriage or not, won't be relying on your Liu family to live. If Liu Ryan is causing trouble for you because of me, the Zhuang family will take full responsibility for your future. If you insist on not letting me in, then when Liu Ryan comes after you for something else in the future, I won't interfere. The woman's resolute words fell, and the door to my bedroom opened. For the first time, the maids didn't enter. Instead, a tall, elegant man walked in. I recognized that man. He was the groom from that day. If I'm not mistaken, his name is Zhuang Shinin. When I saw him, it was as if I had seen a lifeline. Tears immediately filled my eyes. Sir, please, I beg you to save me. I really don't know what I did wrong. I don't even know where I am. And I don't recognize Miss Liu from that day. Please, help me call the police. Even if I've truly offended Miss Liu, I'll apologize to her and make amends. If I need to pay compensation, I'm willing to do so. Just please, don't keep me locked up here. Zhuang Shinin probably hadn't expected to see me in such a pitiable state. He sighed, and unexpectedly, he gently patted my back. Mr. Zhou, as far as I know, I can call you that, right? My name is Zhuang Shinin. I'm Liu Ryan's marriage partner. You don't need to be afraid. I won't hurt you. But you must tell me the truth. Do you really not know Liu Ryan? I don't know her. I really don't know her. I shook my head vigorously. But, based on my investigation, you and Liu Ryan do know each other. Zhuang Shinin furrowed his brows as he spoke. And it's not just that you know her. You two were once very close. With Zhuang Shinin's hint, my head hurt even more. It felt like a boiling mass of molten lava was churning in my brain. I painfully pressed my hands to my head and slammed it against the wall twice in desperation. Unexpectedly, I caught sight of the wristband on my arm, the one I used to transfer data in the lab. A chill ran through me. I looked up and pointed at the wristband, explaining to Zhuang Shinin. This is the side effect of the psychotropic drug. Whether I remember her or not, or what our relationship was, I truly don't remember her now. I didn't come that day to ruin your wedding, and I never thought about doing that. If I really had been like she said, chasing after her relentlessly, I would have had 100 ways to get to you. If we really met every day, I could never forget her. After saying that, the large bedroom fell into silence. I wasn't sure if the man before me would believe what I said, though I had no memory of anything now. I knew that, as Zhuang Shinin said, I was indeed a rival in love with Liu Ryan. How could there be a man so generous as to help his romantic enemy escape trouble? Time ticked by second. I didn't dare say anything more. I didn't dare to meet Zhuang Shinin's eyes. I was afraid that in the next moment, his slap would land on my face, maybe in the missing part of my memory. I really was a shameless third party, a woman who seduced others. I don't know how long it passed, but Zhuang Shinin sighed and patted my shoulder again, saying, I found your experimental project. I've also verified your experiment compensation, and it should have been credited already. Don't worry, I won't let you stay trapped here. We live in a society governed by law, and illegal detention won't work. After saying this, Zhuang Shinin stood up and walked to the door. He reached for the doorknob, then hesitated, before turning back to me and saying, I know you don't remember now, but I want you to know, you've never done anything wrong Liu Ryan. On the contrary, it was Liu Ryan who wronged you. Rest well. Eat something. Keep your strength up and maintain your energy. You'll be able to leave here soon. After Zhuang Shinin left, I felt a sudden calm wash over me. I no longer smashed anything and ate every meal cleanly. 2 days later, Zhuang Shinan came again. He brought back my phone and personal belongings, along with a plane ticket to the city where my new house was located. I gratefully accepted all the items, not knowing how to repay him. But he said, "Live your life well, and don't look back." A week later, with Zhuang Shanan's help, I finally escaped that strange mansion. I went straight to the airport. I didn't even dare to say goodbye to anyone I knew in the city. I just boarded the flight to my new city. When the plane landed, I hurriedly swapped my SIM card and deleted everyone in my contacts, both familiar and unfamiliar. The deposit for my new house had already been paid, but due to the unexpected delay, I arrived a week later than planned to complete the transfer procedures. Luckily, the previous owner was kind and didn't ask any questions. Instead, they cooperated and helped me complete the transfer. It wasn't until I received the property deed for the new house that I felt a huge weight lift from my chest. After settling in the new city for 6 months, I gradually forgot about Liu Ryan and the painful days of being trapped in that villa. I opened a small flower shop and spent my days surrounded by fresh flowers. The new city had a spring-like climate all year round, and I was happy every day, living a fulfilling life. Until one day, an uninvited guest walked into my shop. It was Liu Ryan, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. The moment she saw me, without a word, her legs buckled, and she dropped to her knees in front of me. "Joe Rui, I'm truly sorry. I didn't know you had participated in the drug experiment, and I didn't know you really forgot about me. I thought you were just like all the other manipulative men, trying to deceive me. That's why I locked you in the villa, to make you reflect on your actions. Now I know I was wrong. I misunderstood you. Can you forgive me?" When I saw Liu Ryan again, the unknown fear and avoidance that once gripped me had disappeared. I calmly looked into her eyes. "Miss Liu, does it really matter whether I forgive you or not? It's been so long since it happened. I've already forgotten everything that needed to be forgotten. You've already got your own husband, and we're now to parallel lines. We shouldn't have any more interactions." "Husband? You mean Zhuang Shinan?" Liu Ryan got up from the ground, her expression filled with anger. "Don't you dare take Zhuang Shinan's side, that worthless woman. He and I were married for half a year. He made everything seem fine on the surface, but secretly, he transferred all the shares of the group under my name to his. After using me, he kicked me out of the board of directors. Then he conspired with outsiders in the family. After kicking me out of the family, he divorced me. Joe Rui, this time I really have nothing left. Joe Rui, this time I truly only have you." Liu Ryan leaned over the counter, trying to hold my hand. I silently took a few steps back and decisively avoided her. "I'm sorry, Miss Liu, I truly sympathize with your situation, but I really can't help you. I hope you'll pull yourself together and return to your former glorious state soon." It seemed that Liu Ryan didn't catch the politeness and distance in my tone. Instead, she came even closer to me. "How could that be, Joe Rui? Of course you can help me. I know you got 10 million in compensation for the drug experiment. I can see your life now. That money you haven't spent much of yet, right? How about this? We'll go register for marriage tomorrow. You transfer that money into my name, and I'll use that startup capital to open a new company. You should know, my investment vision has always been excellent. It won't take long before this money multiplies, and by then, you can stay at home peacefully being a full-time husband. I'll find a surrogate to have 5 children for you, 3 sons and 2 daughters. Liu Ryan's words grew more and more absurd. Some longtime regular customers who were in the shop overheard and instinctively stepped in front of me. They asked, "Joe Rui, do you want us to help you call the police?" This woman seems to have lost her mind. I shook my head, wrapped the flowers carefully, and thanked them for their kindness. Then I turned and looked at Liu Ryan. "Aren't you leaving yet? If you don't leave now, I will really call the police." Liu Ryan lowered her head and thought for a moment, and eventually she compromised and left temporarily. But ever since that day, Liu Ryan showed up at my little shop almost every day, either helping me unload goods, or cleaning the shop, or bringing me a pile of inedible-loving bento boxes. Liu Ryan's hands were clumsy. When she moved the goods, she would always damage the delicate flowers and leaves. When cleaning, she'd always make things worse, either wiping something wrong or breaking something else. She thought that her efforts were full of deep affection. A woman's clumsiness is the purest form of love. I didn't chase her away, nor did I ask her anything. I just let her keep breaking things. I just silently cleaned up the mess again. A week passed, and Liu Ryan, full of confidence, believed that I must have been touched by her again. So one sunny afternoon, she used the roses from my shop and personally made me a bouquet. Once again, she knelt down on one knee and proposed to me. "Joe Rui, after all these days together, you must have seen my sincerity. Marry me. I promise I will take good care of you, give you the best life." I calmly wiped the counter with a cloth, removing any excess preservative left from the flowers. I glanced up at the bouquet in her arms. Then I quickly picked up a pen and wrote something in my notebook. "Liu miss, I think you've misunderstood. I never said I would accept you. I don't know where you got the idea that I have any feelings for you." Liu Ryan stood frozen. It took her a few seconds to rise from the ground. "Joe Rui, what are you doing? Playing hard to get has lost its charm. All these days, I've been helping out at your shop. You've seen it all. When I broke something, you never said a word to me, just silently cleaned up after me. You've been tolerating me this whole time. So why are you still unwilling to admit you have feelings for me? Maybe you've forgotten everything that happened between us, even the fact that you once loved me. But now, at least you don't hate me, right? We can work on our feelings after marriage. That way, our marriage won't be the grave of our love, but the bedrock on which our love grows. We'll only have each other from now on, and face everything together. Doesn't that sound good?" Her serious tone made me laugh. "Liu miss, I think you've misunderstood quite a lot. I didn't stop you from helping in my shop because I was short-handed. Free labor? Of course, I wasn't going to turn it down. As for the things you broke, I've been keeping track in my ledger, including the bouquet of roses just now. It adds up to 24,500 yuan. How would you like to pay?" Liu Ryan was completely stunned. She threw the bouquet to the ground in frustration. "Joe Rui, how can you be so heartless? You're still so clear with me. Even if I don't pay, what are you going to do about it?" I smiled slightly, took out my phone, and called the police. When the police arrived, I handed over the evidence. Liu Ryan not only had to pay for the damages, but also received a 3-day detention. 3 days later, as soon as Liu Ryan was released from the detention center, she ran straight to me. At that time, I was unloading goods from a small truck on the side of the road. When I turned around to open the car door on the other side of the street, a fast-moving motorcycle came rushing toward me. "Be careful!" Liu Ryan shouted from a distance toward me. While shouting, she ran in my direction. It seemed like she was trying to rush into my arms to shield me from the oncoming vehicle. But by the time I heard Liu Ryan's warning, I had already dodged to the side. Liu Ryan ran up, but instead of landing in my arms, she was struck by the motorcycle and sent flying. Her legs twisted into unnatural angles on the spot. She lay in a pool of blood. After that, Liu Ryan did not immediately lose consciousness. She dragged her useless legs, crawling in my direction. Joe Rui, I would give up my life for you. Don't you still believe that I love you? After this intense shock, I suddenly regained my memories. I lowered my head and coldly looked at the woman who resembled a stray dog. I don't believe it. The same lie. How could I possibly believe it for the third time? Later on, Liu Ryan's legs were amputated. She was taken back to the Liu family and locked up. For many years, I didn't hear any news about her. I recorded the process of my memory recovery. Then I resubmitted the report to the medical laboratory. As a result, I received a special reward of 5 million. After receiving the money, I expanded my little shop. The weather in the new city was still as good. Every day thereafter was a clear, sunny day. The end.